Alright, so today we actually got the new trailer for The Boys Season 5. So in today's video, I'm just going to be breaking the trailer down, and I'm just going to be gathering up as much Easter eggs as I could and breaking it all down and just explaining everything that could possibly be happening in this season. So please stay tuned. And now, before we actually get into the video, I'd like to ask you all to like, share, and subscribe. But again, thank you guys so much for the growth. Thank you guys so much for the support. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to ask you all to like this video as much as you guys can. It helps a ton. But without further ado, let's get right into the video. The trailer starts off with Homelander walking up on stage in front of a bunch of people and saying that his power is absolute, but he has a bigger destiny. And of course, this is leaning into the fact that now Homelander has a much bigger god complex than he did before, right? Because of course, as we know, at the end of season 4 of The Boys, Homelander is basically running the government now, right? You know, behind the scenes, and everything what he says goes, which is probably going to be like one of the best parts of this season, right? Because now Homelander is so high on power that he's willing to do whatever it takes to keep that power and to gain more power. And then later we see that Butcher and the boys are going into the new headquarters, and Mother's Milk says something very interesting. He says that we think that Homelander is looking for the V1. Then this is explained later by Dr. Shaw, who is of course revealed to be still alive, right? And he's working with the boys, and he's saying that the V1 is the first iteration of Compound V, right? It's the original Compound V. So this seems like it's more of an unrestricted Compound V that, like Soldier Boy and Homelander and these sorts of supes, right? You know, they had to take that in order to get their powers, right? And so if you give Compound V to a person that's already a supe, then let's just see what happens there. But my assumption here is that it's going to jack up Homelander's powers even more, where even Soldier Boy's blast might not even drain his power. Because Dr. Shaw does follow that statement up by saying that if Homelander got his hands on some, then he would be immortal. Then we see here that Marie from Gen V is also in this season as well. Then we see the scene of Butcher talking to the boys and Dr. Shaw, and he says that we hit him with the virus while it still works and kill every supe on the planet. Now, this could potentially mean that they have to infect Homelander before he takes the V1, because if he takes the V1, of course, he's going to be even more powerful. Like how Dr. Shaw said, he would be immortal. So, of course, before he takes that V1, they need to infect him with that virus. Once they take out Homelander, then I don't think any other supe would be as big of a problem as Homelander is. And then we see the scene of Frenchie holding up the virus and a drop coming out of the vial. And it seems like that they infiltrated Vought, and they're probably, poisoning Homelander's food or something like that, right? They're just going to assassinate Homelander quietly with the virus, which of course would not work. But yet again, this could mean something else. Maybe they're infecting somebody else as test. But I assume here that they came to Vought Tower and they're trying to infect Homelander with the virus. And then we get this cool little montage of Butcher, killing guards and soldiers with his new symbiote power. And it seems to me that this is in that same location where A-Train is running, and also what we saw in the previous trailer in one of those camps where, they're keeping the people that are, speaking up against Homelander and the supes and the new government laws. And then we see that Homelander is gathering up the courage to awaken Soldier Boy, and then we finally get the MVP of The Boys in general, Soldier Boy finally waking up. And they make an incest joke, which is a complete reference to the comics in Herogasm, where Soldier Boy and Homelander, they did the deed. You guys could look that up, and I'll put it up on screen here. But of course, in the comics, Soldier Boy and Homelander are not father and son. This is just a reference to that comic panel. And then Homelander says that we need to prepare America for my ascension, just again, his whole god complex and him thinking that, he's some sort of god that's going to descend on the people of America. And then we see Soldier Boy and Butcher finally confronting each other. And here's a little fact. This scene was actually shot somewhere around my neighborhood, right? I wasn't there to see the shooting. I was actually somewhere else. But, it's quite clear to me that this was shot in my neighborhood. I didn't have the privilege to meet Jensen Ackles or Carl Urban, but it's very cool to see that Toronto's getting a lot of representation in this show. Then we see that Soldier Boy shoots Butcher and he says that it seems like you're one of us now, and then Butcher says that if you can't beat him, then join them and then beat him. So we're finally gonna get a Soldier Boy and Butcher fight scene with Butcher having his symbiote powers, and then Butcher of course throws a car at Soldier Boy while he's gearing up to do his explosion. So yeah, I think that Butcher has a very good chance of beating Soldier Boy and Homelander just by looking at this, but I think that Butcher is just going to escape, or he's going to incapacitate Soldier Boy somehow and knock him out and then just escape that way. And then we see the scene of Soldier Boy and Homelander going into Fort Harmony Medical Department, and this looks like this is part of that scene in the first trailer where there's like a bunch of bodies on the field, so I think that the aftermath of this is going to be pretty brutal. And it seems like even the boys are going to come here also, so they're going to have a confrontation with Soldier Boy and Homelander in this scene. And it seems like that they're coming for V1, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like, I mean, you guys could tell me in the comments what you guys think, but I think that they're coming here to do some research on V1 or grabbing a scientist or even more soups from this place. And then we see that the Deep and Noir have a podcast channel of some sorts, right? And it seems like that they're still telling the public that Black Noir can't speak. So yeah, like I think that's going to be very interesting, and they're going to be talking about a lot of stuff about like the freedom camps, quote unquote, and just how Americans should follow Homelander in the future. See the scene of Stan Edgar finally joining the boys, and I think that they're going to, work together to get their hands on V1 and the virus, just to keep it out of Homelander's reach. And I think by the end of the season, we're going to see that Butcher's going to take V1, right? Just to go head to head with Homelander, or maybe even, Stan Edgar came and he's probably going to tell them something about Ryan potentially. And it wouldn't be a season of The Boys if Huey and Butcher aren't fighting. And in this scene, we clearly see that Butcher is choking out Huey. Of course, they had some sort of disagreement and they're butting heads. Who knows what the conversation was about, but we're going to see that potentially Butcher is going to go on his own like how it was in the comics, and he's just going to leave the boys and Huey behind to go face Homelander himself. And then we see this scene of Soldier Boy choking Misha Collins' character, and I didn't watch Supernatural, but this is a Supernatural reunion with Jared Padalecki's character, Misha Collins' character, who is still undisclosed, and of course Jensen Ackles as Soldier Boy. So, you Supernatural fans, I hope you guys are happy to see this. And then we see the scene of Homelander very angry, and he's rushing through the woods, right? He's flying and he's crashing through trees and stuff like that. And I think this is after he took the V1, right? Because in the first trailer of season 5, I know that I got this wrong, but if you see very closely in one of the scenes of the first trailer, Homelander took V1, right? He took some sort of compound V, and now we're seeing that, V1 is a plot of this story. And it seems like that right after Homelander took this, probably Butcher or Ryan or somebody else came to interfere, and he's chasing after them. But it seems like it could either be some sort of side effect of V1, where he just gets angry out of nowhere and he just starts flying through destroying things, or somebody eavesdropped on him and he's just chasing after that person. And then we see the scene of Soldier Boy using his powers, right? Like to fry the compound V out of people. And it seems like that this might be in Vought Tower. Again, I'm not too sure, but just by looking at the ceiling, I think this is a Vought Tower scene. And then later on, we see that Frenchie and Butcher have that same light glowing in front of them, which is Soldier Boy's blast. Of course, I don't think this is the same exact scene, but it's very possible that maybe Soldier Boy just goes nuts at Vought Tower and just blows up the whole building because of his powers, or he's trying to stop Homelander. Maybe Homelander went too far, or he's trying to threaten Soldier Boy in some way, then Soldier Boy tries taking his shot, but it does not work because of the V1. And I think that Soldier Boy is going to attempt shooting that blast at Butcher and Frenchie as well, because of course, that lighting is just 1-for-1. And then we get the scene of Homelander sitting in the White House, and it seems like he just took over the government, right? The Supes overthrew the government like how it was in the Boys comic. And this shot right here is literally a 1-for-1 reference to the panel of Homelander, sitting at the chair, right, at the White House. But, of course, this is a much cleaner scene in the comics. He killed the president and everything like that, and the whole room is filled with blood. So yeah, this is 100% the ending of The Boys season 5. Maybe it might be mid-season, right? Maybe Homelander acts as the president of the United States for a bit, for a few episodes until Butcher comes, but I personally think that this is going to be the last episode of The Boys season 5. And then the very last scene of this trailer, we see that A-Train is confirmed to be working with The Boys, and he's on very good terms with Starlight, right? You know, both of them hug. And then Kimiko finally speaks, like how she did at the end of season 4, but now she's actually talking for real. And she asks that, are you two friends? And then A-Train says, you could talk. And then that's where the trailer ends. And now just by looking at this trailer, it seems like that this season of The Boys is going to be very, very brutal. Now, I'm not too sure if they're going to split the season into 2 parts, right? I did hear some rumors that, you know, they are going to split it into 2 parts. And I think even it was confirmed at one point, but it doesn't say anything like that in the trailer. Like, you know, it just says that it's going to release April 8th. So I don't know if they changed their plans or, you know, if it wasn't even a thing to begin with. So yeah, I am very excited for The Boys season 5. I think it's definitely going to be better than season 4 because I think that Soldier Boy and Homelander are going to have a lot of scenes, right? Especially Soldier Boy. I think Soldier Boy is going to be a very big player in this season of The Boys. And they didn't really specify anything about Ryan, right? You know, he did have a scene in this trailer. It was just one shot. But I think that at the end of this season, I think that Ryan might end up killing Homelander, right? And I think that Soldier Boy might die beforehand. He might die in the second last episode or probably in the last episode. But I think the role of Black Noir is going to go to Ryan, right? He's going to end up killing his father. Maybe he might listen to Butcher. And I think that Butcher might actually die before Homelander does. And then Ryan ends up killing his own father. And then that's where the world is free of supes, because this is one episode that is titled The Frenchman, the Female, and the Man Called Mother's Milk. So that is the second last episode of this season. And it seems like that, you know, Frenchie, Kimiko, and MM are going to die in the second last episode by Butcher himself. I think Butcher might end up killing them like in the comics. Then he'll go after Homelander, because there were some leaked stuff of season 5, like posters and pictures that Butcher is standing in front of the White House, right, you know, ready to confront Homelander. And I think that is where we might potentially see Butcher dying, right? And again, I don't know the whole situation about Soldier Boy. I hope he stays alive until the very end, right? No, I don't want him to die, right? Because I'm such a hardcore Soldier Boy fan. But of course, he's going to end up dying. So I think that this is going to be a 3-way battle, right? You know, we're gonna have Soldier Boy versus Homelander versus Butcher, because I think Soldier Boy is gonna end up turning on Homelander. Now, I don't know if he's gonna become good at the last episode, but it's very well possible that at the White House we might get a fight between Soldier Boy, Butcher, and Homelander, and potentially even Ryan in there. I think Ryan might end up working with Butcher to take out his grandfather and his father. But yeah, that's it for today's video. I'd like to ask you all to like, share, and subscribe. And again, thank you guys so much for the growth. Thank you guys so much for the support. I really, really appreciate it. And let me know in the comment section, are you guys excited for The Boys season 5? And I will be making more videos about this show when the season, of course, comes out in April. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, other than that, thank you guys so much for watching.